can listen to somebody who is 80 or older. It's just thrilling. But what I'm really curious about, given your rich experience, your love of this country, your love of freedom, how you gave so much to fight against evil and Hitler, what do you think about the direction that the nation is going? Napolitano with the Department of Homeland Security, really not showing the respect of our veterans and saying that they're categorized as domestic terrorists and these kind of things. I'm really curious about your views of today and would find that fascinating.
That's a good question. Do you want to, one of you, which one wants to answer that? Would you want to say something, Admiral, first?
Admiral. Well, I think the important thing is the individual faith that the nation has to have in the individual. We're still with the individual person, and with the people we have, there's always going to be a situation where I just consider it a bad apple or a situation gone sour. Mm-hmm. It's just going to happen. You cannot be in the circumstance of having everything go right every time. I can remember being in an experiment that we did at sea in the Atlantic in terms of when we were testing the limits of a man in terms of his ability to be able to respond to stress. And I was one of the officers in that group, and we were treated very poorly. We came back. We had not been fed well at all. We were deprived of sleep, just had many problems. And it's the limitation of the individual, and it's the dedication of the individual to the country and things of that nature. It's just like a barrel of apples. There's one in there that's going to be a problem, and the only solution ultimately for it is to remove that apple so it doesn't affect the rest of the barrel.
Right.
And that's exactly what we had. We came back from a long patrol, and were being observed particularly by the psychiatrists and psychologists in terms of our breakdown. And I remember vividly where one of our sailors, unfortunately, did break down. He tried to sink the ship. His lack of knowledge on just two little valves meant all the difference. But we partially submerged at the pier, broke the mooring lines, and we're getting ready to head for the bottom. And I happened to be the duty officer and the chief engineer at that time, and the chief petty officer, who was just same thing in the Army as a master sergeant. Why, he and I both hit the control area and were able to get the ship up, so she came up and went again. But you're always going to have somebody. You're going to have somebody that breaks down. The psychiatrists were just delighted that they had a subject to observe for the next year or so, and he was sent at that time to St. Albans, which was a psychiatric hospital in the New York area, and they had their subject matter to look at and to study and to know what's what. But all of us are in the circumstance, and war is a very stressful thing in and of itself, and the uncertainties, I've always equated it as the long wait with a few seconds of terror, and that's just about it. You've got long periods of time involved. Is that what you would say too, Jordan?
Yes, but I'd like to mention this. In response to the lady's question,